Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us here at the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago's Toute Bagai Lecture Series. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Miss Abdullah, good morning. Good to see you, good to see you. Welcome, everyone. My name is Joseph Bertrand, Education and Outreach Officer at the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. And it is my pleasure to welcome each of you all here again with us at the Toute Bagai Lecture Series. We are having such a wonderful time meeting once a month, talking about everything, Toute Bagai, everything heritage. And this particular lecture, this particular session is an extremely important and powerful one. This one is speaking to regional connection, my friends. Yes, this is our very, very first international lecture. The Toute Bagai Lecture Series, yes, is moving along smoothly. So we are heading across to Barbados, my friends. For the members of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, just so that you know, we have brought together the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago in partnership with the National Trust in Barbados. Yes, we are a Caribbean people, and we are coming together to talk everything heritage. So it is a very, very important honor to have Mr. Geoffrey Ramsey, the president of the Barbados National Trust, here with us to take us through our paces, the Synagogue Historic District. And we can learn from Barbados where this is concerned, and we soak in all that he has to tell us. At this time, remember, please keep your mic on mute. Yeah, please keep your mic on mute so that everyone is able to hear what is happening. So take a moment to ensure that your mic is on mute. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, so ensure that your mic is on mute. Yep. And if you have any questions, please use the chat box. Yes, so that we can have them answered. Yes, so in the chat box, you can have your questions answered. And for those who are not members of the National Trust as yet, who are not members of the National Trust, and I say as yet, please click the link and join us in this movement to safeguard our heritage. So we are preparing ourselves to listen to Mr. Ramsey, who will take us through the Synagogue Historic District, promoting urban renewal and resilience in a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And our members in Trinidad and Tobago, we are working towards having one of our sites be recognized by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. So this particular talk is extremely important for us to learn and understand what it means to have a World Heritage Site. Yeah, right across in Barbados. So my friends, again, welcome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the messages as well. Again, as y'all are coming in, please remember to keep your mic on mute so that we all can hear and really be part of the presentation given to us by the president of the Barbados National Trust, Mr. Geoffrey Ramsey. Yep. So wonderful, we're moving smooth. This is wonderful, my friends. Thank you all for joining, and I will begin officially. Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, fetters and masqueraders from all over the globe. My name is Joseph Bertrand, Education and Outreach Officer at the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all here again in this wonderful February time to this Toute Bagai lecture entitled The Synagogue Historic District. And it is presented by the president of the National Trust in Barbados, Mr. Geoffrey Ramsey. And for those who are members of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, we are working towards safeguarding our heritage. And guess what? In Barbados, the National Trust in Barbados has the very same mandate, safeguarding their heritage. And in turn, working together, we safeguard the Caribbean identity through heritage. So at this time, it is my pleasure to welcome to the virtual podium Mr. Geoffrey Ramsey, President of the Barbados National Trust. So, good evening, good afternoon, sorry.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Joseph, for that inspiring introduction. Your energy is incredible, I have to say. And on behalf of the Barbados National Trust, I greet you with thoughts of collaboration we have discussed, and this is what is partially emerging from our efforts, partnerships with our regional brothers and sisters. I'm very pleased that from initiatives last year that Trinidad and Tobago's National Trust has shown tremendous interest in collaboration and in partnership. And it is hoped that later this year there will be exchange visits following all of what we are currently engaged in. I would like to also give credit to my colleagues here, Council and Management of the Barbados National Trust, who are working very hard to meet our mandate locally. And I'd like to give a special word of credit to our new committee, our newest committee, called the Core Committee, headed by Mary Claire Leiter and Lisa Nicole Gibson. So, without further ado, I'm going to share 400 years worth of history in about half an hour. And I will honor Joseph's request for about 35 minutes, which will be followed by questions and answers in that closing session. This is a story of perseverance and resilience over the centuries. And it has come about over, well, 4 decades, but the restoration aspect, which I will speak to later, has taken no less than 35 to 40 years. And that has involved a lot of people making efforts to raise the funds, significant funds required. And this is a success story. So I shall begin to make the best use of our time by giving a little context before we discuss restoration. The history of the first Jewish settlement really begins 1 year after our settlement here by the English in 1627. So 1 year later, we record the first arrivals of Jewish families who were Sephardic Jews, primarily coming from Europe by way of Recife in northwest Brazil. They had fled persecution and inquisition in Spain and Portugal, seeking refuge in Brazil, which was under Dutch rule for a brief period. Portugal then reclaimed Brazil as their colony, resulting in some Jews fleeing to Barbados and beyond in the early 17th century. And this map will help you to appreciate what I've just said. From Holland through Lisbon and Seville, escaping to the West Indies is what this is termed, to Recife in Brazil, and then further migration to the Caribbean islands, Barbados being one of those, and then onwards to the eastern seaboard of the US in time. Now, this story of migration is also interwoven with the story of sugar and the extreme wealth that derived from the sugar industry. This attracted many settlers, including the Sephardic refugees from Recife in Brazil and Holland. Importantly, they brought the Dutch technology of windmills for grinding sugar cane. And at its peak, in this small island of 166 square miles, there were over 500 built and operating on the island, which in terms of density is quite an achievement. The exact number is debated, but I think it was about 504. Many of these are in ruins today, but the National Trust has the honor of the most intact sugar windmill, which is at Morgan Lewis, for those of you that know Barbados, or this can be seen on our website. The Nidhe Israel Synagogue, therefore, at the center of this district, is of considerable antiquity, dating from around 1654. That is the date we accept when it was built. And because of the historical connection where this synagogue is considered the oldest in the Americas, in some respects, it can be seen as the parent synagogue of several synagogues in the US. I will now show you a medieval street pattern of Bridgetown itself. And circled in red is the historic location where the synagogue has been since the mid-1600s. This pattern has not changed. And I will explain later that this street pattern, unaltered, has largely been responsible for Barbados being awarded or receiving the designation of a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in Paris. This image delineates in Bridgetown the outline of the World Heritage boundary in red. And for those of you who may not be familiar, Bridgetown is in the southwest corner of Barbados as a historic town, the second to be settled. The red arrow denotes where the Synagogue Historic District is situated within the official boundary of the World Heritage Site. Now, it comprises about, its site, 2.25 acres. It includes several historically significant elements, including a cemetery dating back to 1658. This cemetery recently required expansion to accommodate the needs of the community because the existing 3 burial areas had reached capacity. There is also an historic mikveh. Some of you may be familiar with this. It's a historic structure that was unearthed in 2009. It's a ritual bath, and we think this predates actually the synagogue. The museum, which is also on the site, is in a building which dates to about the 1700s, but it's been renovated and is one of the, if not the most beautiful museums that we have in Barbados, describing the story of Jewish settlement and its significance to the island's history, which, as I mentioned earlier, includes the story of sugar. Finally, Codd's House, which is where the Emancipation Act was signed to end slavery in 1834. It took another 4 years before it was actually fully implemented, but in 1834 was located on this site, but sadly was demolished in the mid-1980s, unfortunately. And the synagogue was also slated for demolition at that time. Now, just to complete the historical picture, you are looking at 2 original photographs from 1925, when the old synagogue building with its interior was sold. I know it's hard to believe, but it was sold because the last Jewish family and last Jewish person was in the process. They were all emigrating, and there was no one left really to take advantage of this beautiful place of worship. It was sold to commercial interests, and that only changed in the mid-1980s. I will continue with this story. Efforts were made in 1984-85 by the Jewish community to petition the then Prime Minister, Tom Adams, to save this building. You can see it there on the left, from destruction. And that petition was successful, and the Prime Minister agreed not to demolish the synagogue. The photograph on the right is typically, if you can see it. Is everyone hearing me clearly?
Loud and clear. Thank you so
Good.
much.
The photograph on the right is the interior of the synagogue, and you may be able to see chandeliers there. These chandeliers are not the originals. When the synagogue was sold, the originals, the synagogue was virtually stripped of all of its historic elements. And these chandeliers and all of the other hanging elements were taken to the DuPont Museum in Delaware, USA, who in time, when approached to return them during the restoration, declined to return them. So the project team had to take the next best option, which was to have replicas made exactly of the originals, and that is what you're looking at. In terms of the development itself over 35 years, what you see here, and I hope that all of you will come on the exchange visit later this year, lands had to be purchased with the help of the Ministry of Housing to open up this site, because what you see is not what was. The entry to the synagogue was quite constricted due to the parcelation of lands owned by others. Sorry, this is just outside of the synagogue. It's called a marble laver for washing of hands before entering the synagogue proper. This is a better photograph of the interior. And at the back is the bima where the rabbi would stand between the lit candles. And unlike most churches, the congregation in these are authentic in terms of style and design. The benches, they sit all around the rabbi in this synagogue, behind, on the sides, and in the front. And he is speaking from the rear of the synagogue. I promised Joseph I would explain the layout of the synagogue for those that may not be familiar. So I've kept my word. The upper level is not used much anymore, except for very large functions, but a couple hundred years ago, women and men were not allowed to sit together. So that upper balcony, that mezzanine floor, would have been for ladies only. And you see the crisscross in the lattice work. That is deliberately part of the design so that the ladies, could remain private and no one looking up would be afforded any inappropriate views. This is one of the graveyards, the largest, the oldest burial in here being 1658, which is older than many of our churches, and many prominent individuals are buried here, rabbis from Europe. There's no end to this graveyard by itself. You could write a book about, and indeed, Eustace Shilstone, I should honor his name, who is not Jewish, but a Bridgetown attorney. He came here many days after work to record and transcribe the information on these tombstones, and the publication that exists, which speaks to the history of this place, is largely due to Mr. Shillstone's efforts. He was also an early member of the Barbados Museum and Historical Society. These are going to be a series now of before and after photographs. You can see on the left, this is the external entrance to the main cemetery, and in our restoration, the original design of the gates was created, and that's what you see in the after photograph. This large former parking lot has become, you'll see later, a designed, well-planned, well-treed parking area that is maintained by the management of the Synagogue Historic District. This I will dwell on for a moment. This is a city block that comprises the historic district. This in the center, the jewel in the crown, is the synagogue here. Is everyone seeing my cursor?
Yes, we are.
Good. There are a total of 6 buildings in here, not just the synagogue. We have a monument. There is the old fire station. The only new building constructed was the new social hall. These are the old shoemaker shops. My screen is a bit small here. Shoemaker shops and the museum. And this is the large main cemetery here. So it is quite a complex of buildings with a story that is multi-layered. The phases of restoration involve 2 sets of land acquisition. That takes time, effort, and money in the Northwest and Southwest. I'm paraphrasing a bit here just to stay within the time allocated. The reconstruction of the shoemaker's shops on James Street, the restoration of the old fire station. The first fire station in Bridgetown happens to be within this city block. And the development of the Emancipation Monument was specially to commemorate the site of where the Emancipation Act was signed. It was in William Codd's house at the time in 1834. These are just different photographs of what the property looked like during construction. It was not a pretty sight because to achieve the outcome, one has to really try to determine what is to be retained, what is to be preserved, and what we can do without. But one of the major changes was to open up the original gates and original entry as it was historically. Some of the ongoing elements are the Montefiore fountain, which is complete actually. That was a gift by Mr. Montefiore and his son. They were Jewish. The archaeological investigations, these were substantial. This was part of what we have today as a destination. The existing synagogue, mikveh, and the structures there have created a prime attraction for heritage tourism, those who are researching their genealogy, and also we do have multi-faith services there. Importantly, we want to develop linkages with other heritage tourism sites in Barbados. In this block that I mentioned, this synagogue historic block, one of the 4 roads around is called Synagogue Lane. This, where my cursor is what was, it's not historic, this was a driveway into the property, but this we closed in order to restore this wall. This is another street that takes you, this is Synagogue Lane here actually. It's a bit of a dark photograph, but that is one of the roads you must travel on. It's all one way to get to the entrance. This is what the old entrance looked like on the right. And you will eventually see what it looks like later on. These are the buildings that we inherited when we began. Quite interesting, and in terms of antiquity, you can see the stonework. This is where different shoemakers and vendors were. Each little door was a one-room shop, quite deep, but very narrow. And we thought the character was, whether you're an artist, a photographer, this building was photographed many times. However, to complete the restoration, it could not be left like this. And this is what it is today. This is original doors taken away to workshops and returned. This is plastered not in cement, but in lime mortar. This was a door, but it was opened up for viewing into one of the graveyards. And the former Prime Minister, founding father of Barbados, as he's often viewed, Errol Barrow, has stated that he has Jewish roots, and actually there's one of these tombstones in here that has the name on it that would lend support to his claim. Here you see in days of old, Jewish worshippers did not like attention, did not want any fanfare. So this was the official entrance to the synagogue. Very discreet, tucked away in a corner. And we decided, if we could, to restore it in honor of the practice of the time. On the wall, you can see an indication of a yellow sign, and that is one of the UNESCO signs that is now visible and in terms of plaques for passers-by to read, even if you're not in the synagogue property. Externally, on the street, if we look at the perimeter, this is the old fire station built in the mid-1800s. This is what it was. The police use this as a workshop. They're just across. Central Police Station is right opposite. And this is what it has become. This building had no front. You could drive in, you can see a vehicle in there. We did the research and replaced the front as authentically as we could, the way it looked in the mid-1800s. And these are other views of the old fire station restored with its new frontage, window, doors, based on our research as was necessary before we started. Today, this is what we have. On the left was the original condition of the fire station. We looked at this arch and thought, well, maybe if we open this up, we might find something of interest. We did, and that is what forms the entrance officially to the inner courtyard, where there's a cafe, an art gallery, a fire museum, through this archway into the old fire station. And this building on the left is the art gallery before, and on the right is the art gallery post restoration. The project had many donors, but in the final phase 3, there was one donor who made it all possible. To buy a building opposite, across the road, this pink building, have that demolished, mainly to create additional parking. And this is what, if you were here, you would see now, and this is monthly parking. The parking helps to meet all of the maintenance requirements. This site is entirely self-sustaining. It does not require, if you want to give donations, you can, but it is maintained entirely off of its own revenue. This is the new monument to commemorate the former Cod's house. And this is a beautiful structure, access whether through the front or through the rear. This is the rear of the synagogue itself. We have a gate here so that for those who may wish to access it more easily. This is the new social hall. And this is the only new building, which is available for lectures, seminars, workshops, and also after Friday night's worship. Those who attend usually come here for refreshments. I spoke about this, I think, earlier, the Montefiore Fountain, which has been restored, thankfully. And this is the mikveh restored. All of this was once at the street level or level of the paving, and this was funded by donations, and late historian Carl Watson and his assistant from the US, Michael Stoner, were digging one day and slowly kept going, and one step revealed itself, and eventually they got down to the bottom where there is this pool, a ritual bath. You can look up mikveh and see biblically what is its significance. This pool never empties. If you empty this pool this afternoon, within 1 hour it'd be full again. This is quite something. But you must have a mikveh associated with a synagogue. The two go hand in hand. This is the museum which I spoke about, formerly an old warehouse and currently restored and houses a beautiful museum. This is one of the photos of the interior, and it's self-guided and is an interpretive museum. It deals with spices, the story of sugar. You can see some of these photos, and also the graveyard, the story of the graveyard. So you can sit on these various stools and look at the 15-minute video. I'm showing this for those, again, who have not had the privilege or pleasure of visiting to see. This is open to visitors every day. Today, this is pretty much what we have from the dilapidated fire station. This is all within the new car park area. And we managed to get, speaking of restoration, remove the concrete off of this building and expose the original stone. And this, for your information, is the official entry into the site, past the booth, which is the point where you pay for parking, and is an entirely landscaped and treed parking lot and lit. I would say probably the safest parking area in Bridgetown. And coming to the end of the presentation, I hope I have not exceeded my time. In 2011, Bridgetown and its garrison, so the two go together, received the designation of a World Heritage Site. The synagogue happily sits within the boundary and other buildings. But we need a lot more to be done, because having a World Heritage designation, and when I was in Trinidad, I discussed this with Graham, Deanne, Joseph, all the colleagues at NTTT. There is a lot of effort that goes into this designation, but it is important to use it because it can contribute to heritage tourism, as I said before, faith, genealogy, all of those. It must conform with the principles of UNESCO's World Heritage designation. If one has that designation and you don't conform, there is a risk. You can lose it. We also hope that in an ongoing basis, that this will respond to the recommendations made in the Barbados Tourism Master Plan relative to cultural heritage and attractions and niche tourism markets. And very importantly, because of the threats in the past, I actually didn't tell you that in 1831, a major hurricane destroyed the synagogue and it was rebuilt. And then in my lifetime, in our lifetime, there was this threat of demolition. And it was sold in the 1920s. And yet it survived. But to protect this synagogue and its site from those unwanted, undesirable threats, the entire site and the synagogue especially, these are now vested in the Barbados National Trust for protection and used by the Barbados Jewish community, who have actually jurisdiction over the burial areas. And as you see here, this project was funded by a private benefactor and, of course, with support from the government of Barbados. With that, ladies and gentlemen, honoring my time frame, that is the half-hour summary of 400 years of perseverance and resilience that have led us today to be proud of what we have. And I do hope someday that in Trinidad and Tobago, and in Trinidad, I should say, or Port of Spain, more specifically, that all that you have can lead to a similar designation with your rich cultural heritage fabric over there. So thank you for inviting me to give this presentation to you.
The president of the Barbados National Trust, Mr. Geoffrey Ramsey, thank you so much. Thank you so much also. I acknowledge the kind words and the well wishes for Trinidad and Tobago in pursuing the UNESCO World Designation. So thank you so much and look forward to your assistance in that particular regard. So firstly, thank you for the tour of the synagogue. Thank you for the tour of the cemetery and also looking at restoration. It was amazing, and I think I speak for everyone in the chat and in the room here. Fantastic presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, just put the claps, put everything inside the chat. Let him know how fantastic this presentation, was. Fantastic. Are you seeing all those claps, hands in the air, waving them like they just don't care? Thank you so much. Wonderful. Fantastic. So, Mr. Ramsey, as president of the Barbados National Trust, firstly, one question came in about how large is the Jewish community now in Barbados in terms of its current use? The synagogue, that is.
The synagogue, okay. It is not very large. The synagogue is used, and especially in, forgive me for using a tourism term, the winter months between December and April, for touristic reasons. A lot of visitors come in, some who have homes here, who winter here, and you get a very large turnout every Friday evening, which is typically when services are held. When the winter season is over and many leave or return to their homes, it is still used, but I would say not to full capacity. I would not want to give exact numbers, but there's still an active Jewish community here who value the synagogue and its environs.
And as a site of worship.
Yes.
Yes. Fantastic. Thank you very much. And that question came from Ms. Jane. Mr. Gilbert, H. Gilbert, thank you very much for the presentation. Excellent presentation of a 400-year history. John Bishop in the chat, a wonderful and fascinating presentation. Thank you. We have several claps in the chat as well. And Nisha has asked, are there any guided tours being offered at the synagogue? And if so, how does one book a tour?
Yes, there are two types of tours. Self-guided for those that wish, and guided for those that may prefer that option. Now, without going into too much detail, many cruise tourism passengers make their arrangements. You know how cruise tourism works. Everything tends to be controlled on the ship. So many people have their arrangements in place with their tour guides prior to berthing on arrival here. And there are a number of guides who are certified and qualified to do tours here and around Bridgetown. And I see them there quite often when I do visit. But equally, there are those who are free to enter the synagogue alone, following, of course, the practices of a place of worship. You're allowed to go into the museum on a self-guided tour. So those are the options. And I would say perhaps if, for those listening, you would like to go online and look up this website, Synagogue Historic District.com. There's a lot of information there. It's a very educational site, designed deliberately for those who are off island. So that would be my response to the question that was asked.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Also, and any questions, please place them in the chat. All right, please place them in the chat so that we'll be able to address them as we go along. A question from Mr. Sweet. Did Barbados have on-island craftsmen for the restoration works? Excellent question.
Yes, yes.
Fantastic.
At the time, one of our major contractors who had skilled artisans from Barbados and a few already on staff and living here. These were not brought in for the project, but those who were resident here within that company, some were a couple from Guyana, but this project required a high level of artistry with coral stone. The Emancipation Monument, which I showed you earlier, the columns, a lot of that work was cut on site from stone. Unlike Trinidad, which is volcanic, Barbados, sorry to deviate for a moment in terms of geology, Barbados is a coral stone island. It emerged from the ocean floor. There are no volcanoes here to the best of my knowledge and our knowledge. So stone quarries exist, and coral stone is, you can see it in the walls. I've just gone back to slide 1. Stone is readily available, and the local contractor and his team did this. I think the only skill set we had to bring in was for plastering and painting. We use and it's been referred to in biblical writings, lime mortar. We've since, I'm not sure in Trinidad, but we have since rebuilt a lime kiln to be able to meet the demand of projects like this. But we imported the lime products from the US. I hope that answers the question in enough detail.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And at this time, for our Trinidad National Trust friends, family, members, those who are not yet members, but will become members, remember, Mr. Ramsey mentioned earlier about a possible visit to Barbados, sorry, and you can look forward to that on June the 4th to the 7th. I'll give you 1 second to pull out your pen and paper and write down June 4th to the 7th, right? 4th to the 7th of June, the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago will be visiting the National Trust of Barbados. All right. So if you want to be part and parcel of that, ladies and gentlemen, contact the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, 225-4750. That number again, 225-4750, June 4th to the 7th. Right? Now,
may I say, Joseph, briefly, our Barbados National Trust is looking forward to this visit and will host you. As short as that visit is, you'll be given the royal tour. Whoever comes, I hope quite a number of you do, but we are preparing and ready for this visit, and your tours will not be only in Bridgetown, but we will arrange an island-wide program.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And friends, you heard it first, and from the horse's mouth, you will be getting the royal tour. Thank you very much, Mr. President Ramsey. So we're moving into some more questions. Busy. Yes, granted, we are looking at the historic district within Bridgetown, right? But we have a question that is looking at the wider Jewish community. I hope I am pronouncing this correctly, but Spigotstown? Spikes. Okay, Spikestown. There's a synagogue there that was burnt.
That is correct.
Yes. So just if you can give a little bit on the wider Jewish community in Barbados.
There was a second synagogue.
Mm-hmm.
Despite best efforts by some qualified researchers and historians, it has not been found definitively.
Right.
The story goes that there was a brawl after a particular event. And when I say that, I'm talking about a dispute, physically, a physical altercation that got out of hand, and the synagogue was burnt.
Mm.
I would imagine not by the local populace, but anyway, that is the fact on record.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pity, because that is one of our favorite, speaking generally, and you will see when you come, Spikestown is one of our most charming of the 4 towns. That's one of the most, if not the most charming town. And the name Spites, it was named after Mr. Spite, who it was considered was Jewish, but there's no trace definitively, despite the writing and the research, on where is that synagogue. We have been on tours. There might be 1 or 2 possible sites, but you have to have hard evidence to come to a definitive conclusion. So ultimately, this is the only synagogue that we can point to in Barbados for the time being, until there's some further evidence there where that was.
Understood.
What I would just add quickly is that since synagogues typically are associated with having a ritual bath nearby or a mikveh, one way of tracing that was to see if there was a spring somewhere in Spikestown that would, by working backwards, lead you to conclude, well, if there's a spring here, much like we found here in Bridgetown, then you could, by deduction, conclude that maybe the synagogue was close by. But that is still research ongoing, I'm afraid, I have to say. And we'll keep you posted in terms of...
Thank you. Thank you so much. And indeed, thank you very much for that comprehensive answer. Now, keeping with the archaeological work, right? Professor Berriton, good afternoon, good evening, Professor Berriton. Thank you so much for being here with us. Also recognizing Ms. Margaret McDowell and the CEO of the National Trust, Mr. Graham Sweet. I also saw Ms. Nisha Ghani as well. Thank you all for joining. And the question from Professor Berriton, the archaeological work, was it done by locals, like Carl Watson, or mainly foreign persons coming in?
I would have to say the late Carl Watson, he passed away recently, was spearheading the archaeological research with some of his graduate students. And the one that stands out is Michael Stoner from the US, who was Carl's understudy, and Mr. Stoner helped a great deal, but there were other Barbadians very much involved in the excavations, the hard work of digging into what was, if you recall what I showed you, this mikveh, this cavity below ground was filled to the surface with refuse, with stone and marl. you could have parked on top of it then, because they had to dig and remove, I mean, so many cartfuls of rubble and debris as they got deeper and deeper. It must have been a very exciting moment as an archaeologist to find that I found one step, and then I'm at step number 4, and it's turning left, which it does here, you know, as it goes down and deeper. It's quite deep, actually. So a combination of Dr. Watson leading this with local help and graduate students, one of whom certainly was from the US.
Okay, thank you very much. And that really speaks to the work that is being done currently as well, no? Continuing.
Well, the work that has been visibly ongoing from time to time is keeping on top of these tombstones in a 400-year-old location with great care and
Yes.
without chemicals, to keep these tombstones restored. However, in answer to the question, many of the artifacts which are not on display in the museum proper are stored safely in boxes. So what is on display is a small fraction of what was found.
Okay. Right.
This was a treasure trove of artifacts, I have to say.
I would imagine.
And that is no surprise given its location. I might add, for those who are students of history or lovers of history, that Bridgetown, having been a city of multiple, if you will, communities, immediately adjacent to, as we were developing the site, immediately adjacent was on record the Quaker burial ground. The Quakers, that's a story for a follow-up talk.
Another session.
Yes, but we found as we were digging as the contractor was working on the social hall, a slab was unearthed of a very prominent member of the Quaker family. And the Quakers, you can actually research this online. What is the story of the Quakers? You can see them in South Carolina, various sites where they're honored here. But the parking area here would be over some graves, I would have to say, because the parking area was used long before this restoration began. So I mentioned the Quakers because that is part of the puzzle, the story. But I will listen for your questions, any further you have.
Understood. Thank you very much.
I see there's a hand up.
No, it's okay. That's a legacy hand. She was able to, yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Put it in the chat.
I see.
But yes, so folks, we realize that the president of the Barbados National Trust is giving us a lot of homework. All right. So we have some research to do on the historic district, the synagogue itself. Could you give us the website one more time?
Yes, Synagogue Historic District.
Synagogue Historic District.
Much as you see in this first slide.
.com. Thank you so much. So yes, so we have a lot of homework, folks. Check it out. And also, we have another question about the administration. So excellent and comprehensive lecture. This is from Ms. McDowell. What can you tell us about the administrative arrangements to manage the historic synagogue?
Very good question.
Yes.
This site is managed by a separate board. As I said, it comes under the ambit of the National Trust, the Barbados National Trust, but there is a dedicated board of 4 individuals set up who meet regularly to discuss any relevant aspects of the site. And that board is responsible for, and their mandate is to manage the site and every aspect, be it donations, maintenance, and I would say it is kept, this site was finally launched as a complete city block in 2017.
2017.
I think it was April of 2017. So from that time until now, 2026, the board has managed this site. And as I said, the board is quite pleased because it is it's a sustainable situation. One doesn't have to borrow money to maintain this site. There's so much I could talk about, but I think if there are questions, any burning questions arising from what we've discussed today, I'm quite happy if one contacts me through you at the trust, Joseph.
Yes.
I'm happy to answer questions because clearly I put as much into the time as we can, but there's a lot more that people your friends and supporters may want to know.
Understood. But we are approaching the 6:30 mark, which would bring us to the end of our session. So again, within the chat, my friends, we have the link to become a member of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. So if you are not yet a member, please click that link and become part of the movement that safeguards our natural and built heritage, my friends. Yes, so that is in the chat. And at this time, Professor Berreton has also dropped in her comments as well. Thank you so much. And to the President of the National Trust of Barbados, thank you very much, Mr. Ramsey, for taking us through this. I want to change this thing from being a lecture to almost tour-like experience, this virtual tour. This virtual tour of the Synagogue Historic District. On behalf of us all here within the chat, the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, thank you very much for agreeing to do this for us, and a wonderful presentation at that. Is there any final words that you would like to give us before I wrap things up?
Simply to say thank you to all of those online. This has been an honor to have been invited to share with you this evening a story that we are quite proud of. And I would like to encourage you to pursue your project in Port of Spain, because you equally have an area, shall we call it the Savannah Historic District? I speak under correction.
Yeah.
I saw so much there that would qualify you to achieve the same designation. So I would like to think that initiative would continue, and I wish you well in your endeavors.
On behalf of the National Trust, we say thank you. National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, thank you so much for that. And the people of Trinidad and Tobago, thank you very much. And I am so happy that we are building and have built this partnership, and looking forward to the fruits that this relationship will bear. So thank you so much. And at this time, my friends, of course, Miss Leslie Ann, this kind of collaboration will occur again. And just to give you some more information, June 4th to the 7th, the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago will be visiting Barbados for the Royal Tour, as Mr. Ramsey has dubbed it. So again, thank you so much. Well received, wonderful information. Thank you very much. Wonderful that you have noted it. Excellent. So, my friends, don't forget the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. We have so much planned for you, so many ways to engage in our heritage and engage in the work of heritage preservation. Sessions like this start the conversation with the Toute Bagai Lecture Series, but there's so much that we can get involved in. There is the Easter event Hop, Hunt, and Heritage at Millfleur, which is the headquarters of the National Trust. So please check that out. Click the link. It is in the chat as well. So at this time, it is the time for refreshments, right? For those in Barbados who may not, okay, excellent. Write an email for the Royal Tour, no problem. So in the chat, you will get an email address, but you can also call 225-4750. 225-4750 to book that tour, to book your space on that tour, and also become a member of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. So yes, my friends, at this time, it is for refreshments. Info@National Trust is in the chat as the email address. So yes, refreshments. And for those, my friends in Barbados, we normally have refreshments down the hall to the left, and open your fridge. The refreshments are there on behalf of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago and the National Trust of Barbados. The refreshments are there down the hall to the left.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Joseph. Thank you. We
Mr.
look
Ramsey,
forward.
thank you so much. Thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
taking us through the paces, and we look forward to continued collaboration with the
Absolutely.
National Trust in Barbados. So my
Thank you.
friends, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for engaging with the presentation, and we look forward to so much more. Thank you for joining us. We have the Hop, Hunt and Heritage coming up. We have several tours and events, so please stay close to the social media, the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, both on Facebook, and Instagram, and the website for the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, nationaltrust.tt. And where can we find more information about the National Trust in Barbados, Mr. Ramsey?
On our website.
Yes, please, so tell us.
Barbados National Trust.
BarbadosNationalTrust.com.
Yes.
Fantastic.
And
Yes.
I will refer you to your office, because as we are collaborating already and trying to build this partnership, still in its infancy, you would have for your family of friends and supporters the perhaps WhatsApp connections and so forth. Anything further you need, I'm happy to facilitate that. But
thank you.
The website would be a good start, and please feel free. I'm available anytime.
Wonderful, wonderful. So at 3 in the morning, I'll give you a buzz.
You should.
But the information is in the chat. Thank you very much to Ms. Ty Hackett for dropping the information in the chat for us. And at this time, don't forget your refreshments are down the hall to the left in the fridge on behalf of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago and the National Trust of Barbados. And also a special thank you to Mr. Sweet, Miss Bertrand, Diane Bertrand, and Mrs. Hackett for the background work for this particular support for the lecture. And again, special thank you to Mr. Ramsey, President of the National Trust in Barbados. We look forward to continued work with the Barbados National Trust, and also to those in the chat. We look forward to your continued engagement with us. Mr. Franco, how are you? Thank you for joining. Yes, so at this time, have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and I look forward to seeing you all again here, same time, same place, as we continue the Toute Bagai Lecture Series, talking everything heritage, as we continue to safeguard our heritage, natural and built, and continuing to build the relationships with Barbados. And at this time, my name is Joseph Bertrand, Mr. Ramsey, President of the Barbados National Trust. Thank you very much. And to everyone in the chat, thank you for joining us, and do have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Most welcome. Bye-bye.